Hey, this is Steve. I just wanted to give you a heads up that this episode contains references to abuse and violence. It may not be appropriate for kids.
Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Welcome to the Shaken Podcast. I'm Steve Sunshine. Your confidence, your mood, your perspective, even your faith may be shaken because of something that's happened in your life. Jesus told us we'd have trouble in this world, so we're shaken but not surprised. He also said, "Take heart, I have overcome the world." In this podcast, you'll hear honest conversations with people who have or are going through life-altering hard times and have found that God was with them in the midst of it all.
Well, my first real memory was I woke up one night, my dad was beating up my mom, and I went into the kitchen, pulled a knife out of the door, and said if he didn't stop, I would kill it. Wow. And he left the next day. And then it was myself and my three brothers and my mom to survive.
Well, that pretty much speaks for itself. John Jarman went through horrifying childhood trauma. And here's the story of how God pulled him out of the darkness.
I don't really have a lot of memory up until age 12. My dad was an alcoholic, very abusive, so I don't remember a lot of that. Growing up, I thought I avoided the abuse, but apparently I did not. So, it was pretty traumatic, the stuff I saw and stuff I heard. Not realizing that until I got into my late 40s and seeking counseling when I moved back to the Northwest. And I started working with Christina Hall in my counsel off and on. We worked together for off and on 10 years. And you asked, how did I come about writing the book? Well, it was actually her idea.
So broken and redeemed, regardless of what your story is, at some level, that's everybody.
Yes.
But that's where the trust comes in.
Well, and I think that's the world, the fallen world, because of what took place in the garden with Adam and Eve. We're all susceptible to that, and we're all open to that. It's what the choices we make, and some are unplanned, like mine. I just grew up that way, and that's all I saw. And so, I was very hot-tempered. I was very prideful and egotistical because I basically controlled my life from the time I was 12 until, I got out of the Marine Corps and I started coaching. And, I really didn't realize it until, like I said, I started with Christine, and I went, wow, here we are, and how much this affected my life and my relationships up until that point. So, and that was the self-examination that I went through working with her and working with my spiritual mentor, Scotty Kessler.
I know you just said you don't remember or didn't remember a lot of your childhood. What do you remember feeling being in the position you were in?
I can't express the feelings I had. But my first real memory was I woke up one night, my dad was beating up my mom, and I went into the kitchen, pulled a knife out of the door, and said if he didn't stop, I would kill it. Yeah. And he left the next day. And then it was myself and my three brothers and my mom to survive. And so we were working on, that's all I did. And we all kind of did our own thing. I went, we got involved, it was the 80s, when I was in high school. And so I was involved in partying in the drug scene. And I did, I was in there until I joined the Marine Corps in 1987. One day I was at a party and I said, there's got to be more to life than this. And I walked out of the party, and 3 months later, I'm standing in San Diego in boot camp. And that saved my life. Because if I'd have stayed where I was, I'd probably be dead or in jail.
I know that the military has done that for many people. What was that like as a teenager who had been rebellious and getting involved in these other things? Obviously it was your decision to join the Marines, but when you came up against the strict discipline, particularly in boot camp at the beginning, what was that contrast like?
Well, I was a little older, so I didn't join till I was 23. And so I stayed, after high school, I just kind of floated around, partied, did drugs, saw drugs, everything like that. But when I made the decision to get out of that, and I, speaking with the drill instructors or the enlisting Marines and learning a little bit more about the Corps, and the reason why I chose the Marine Corps is two reasons. One, they're the best, in my opinion, toughest. So I wanted to challenge myself because I always tried to find the most challenging thing to do and see if I could do it. And then the last part of it is they got the coolest uniforms.
That's right.
So, and so I was ready for that discipline. I went into it. I cut my hair before I went. Really got in shape, and because I knew what to, I knew going in because I was a little more mature than the 18-year-old kids there. That this is going to be a way of life for 4 to 5 years. And the purpose of boot camp is to get me ready for combat if we have to go. And so that's that was my mindset when I went in. So the adjustment was fairly easy for me. I'd say the hardest part was, not being around the party scene and the drug scene, but that really didn't affect me because I was ready for it.
You went into the Marines as a 23-year-old who had been involved with partying and drugs and came from this really tough childhood. How did you come out of the Marines?
The Marine Corps was where I first got my exposure to church, I would say, because my only knowledge of Christ or anything before that is when I visited my grandmother in Arkansas, and she would say, "Johnny, God's got something special planned for you." And I know that my grandmother was beaming from heaven when she found out the book was written because she knew that was happening. But as we got into boot camp, drill instructors came in Sunday morning and said, "Hey, you guys can go to church. It's an hour away from us." I said, "Sign me up," because I got an hour break from the drill instructors and all that stuff. So that was my first exposure to it. And I came out, I went into go into teaching, to be honest, because I didn't want kids to go down the path I would. I made that choice that, my path wasn't the right path and I didn't have anybody really to guide me. So I wanted to help kids not do what I did. And so I got out of the Marine Corps and enrolled in Ohio University and got my master's in physical education and started a teaching and coaching career. And I coached and taught for 17 years.
Wow. Talk about your, by the way, I've got a cat here as part of our, this is my producer.
Okay.
Tell us about when you gave your life to Jesus, what led up to that and how did that happen?
Well, like I said, as I was exposed to it in the Marine Corps, then I was exposed to it during my coaching career because I coached in the South. And down in North Carolina and Georgia, Fellowship of Christian Athletes is huge. And so, I started attending the huddles at the school, and so I started getting more and more involved in it. But I really never gave my life the way you need to sacrifice, because the subtitle of my book is Finding Freedom Through Complete Surrender. And I think you need to have that complete surrender, really, to God, to open up your heart, open your eyes to, seeing the world differently. And so that really didn't happen until after about 4 years of working with my spiritual mentor, Christina. It was 2016 in November morning. I started as I worked with Scotty, I would get up in the morning and that's my prayer and reading time. And I got up one morning and I just fell to my knees and I said, I can't do this anymore. My life was kind of crumbling around me. And I said, I'm giving everything to you, and sat in prayer for a long time. And that's how I did it. And A.W. Tozer says, when you find Christ, you're going to be by yourself. And I truly was by myself when I truly found that sacrificial moment.
And it makes me want to think about my own journey a little bit. So talk us through, particularly if we have somebody listening who maybe is interested in being a Christian, but maybe isn't one yet and hasn't been through anything like, just the total sacrifice that Jesus calls us to, and the obedience and all of that, as opposed to just saying, yeah, I think I believe this.
So the first thing I would say to somebody in that situation that has a little bit of thirst for it is to find a mentor. Find somebody who's farther along in their faith that can guide you and teach you how to pray, teach you how to read the Bible. Because the Bible is a scary book when you first start reading it, especially the Old Testament. And so I think you need that person to guide you along. And then two, my whole time I was like, I'm not worthy of this. I'm so bad that there's no way I can be forgiven. And I kept that in my mind for a long time until, like I said, I was working with Scotty, and when getting to understand the Word, everything like that. And our work led me to re-enrolling into, I was pursuing the Master's of Theology and 8 hours shy. I haven't gone back and got it yet, finished it, because I've just been too busy. And so, but I wanted a deeper meaning of the Word, so I enrolled in seminary school here in Tacoma so I could find out more about the Word. But I think the mentor is the key. And then the other thing is you can never be so broken that God's not going to be there. But you have to want it. I'll share another quote from A.J. Sabota in one of his books. He said, God made us without our permission. He will not save us without our consent. And so we have to want to be saved.
Yeah.
And so I came to the lowest point in my life at that time that I wanted that saving. And so, it's basically that rock bottom.
And you turn to the right place, which is, I think that's the Holy Spirit.
I do too. Steve, a good look back on my whole life. There was times where I thought the Spirit was guiding me, even though I wasn't walking. I mean, to get up out of a party on New Year's Eve and walk out.
Oh yeah.
Based on my life and join the Marine Corps, and then successfully go through the Marine Corps the way I did. That's the Spirit.
Yeah.
He led me out of that party because he goes, "There's better things for you."
I like to think of those things as links in a chain. That one thing leads to another. That God has orchestrated. However, He does that. Using things that don't seem to be connected, but when you look back, you go, I can see where, the impact of joining the Marines and how that, I wasn't thinking I'm going to find Jesus by joining the Marines, but I look back and I can see that was one of the things that led to it. I think most of us who didn't grow up, and I didn't either, I became a Christian when I was 30. Most of us who didn't grow up believing and following Jesus from childhood have those examples. I think if you do the reflection, it's kind of fun to see how He put it all together.
Well, and that's what I call the self-examination, because as you start to develop that faith and that trust and you surrender, you've got to start looking inside now and saying, okay, what do I need to fix? Mm-hmm. What do I need to empty out of my heart? And who do I need to ask for forgiveness? Because I'm going to tell you, along my way, I just did what John wanted to do. And so there was people I stepped on, and there were people that I hurt. And some of them I've asked for forgiveness, and they've given it to me. And others I haven't been able to get a hold of. And, it's part of that walk, I think, that you have to do. It's just not growing up in it. You don't have any idea what it is. But until you give up completely, I don't think you benefit from the Holy Spirit, because there's a veil over your eyes, and you don't see the Word, you don't see the Bible the same, you don't see the world as the same. And then once you get that freedom up, the world changes. I was on a podcast and the host asked me, what's the biggest difference between John today and John before we gave up that sacrifice? And my response was, I see the world through Christ's eyes. That's the best way I could explain it, because I see the world differently. I don't look at people the same. I don't judge people like I used to. It's a total different vision. And it was the Spirit that gave me that. So,
I mean, that's a beautiful story. And as it always is, when somebody conforms to the character of Jesus, it's beautiful to see that happen. Because you're talking about principles like loving your enemy. I was just listening to a podcast where it was a Christian apologist and an atheist having a discussion/debate, and even the atheist said, "I've got to admit that loving your enemies is a radical idea." And on this show, it's really themed about finding God in the midst of suffering, and I like this conversation as a contrast to probably most of the others where we've had things where things have happened to people, like got sick, or somebody died in a crash or whatever. In your case, there's some of that certainly with your childhood. But I like the way that you're bold about talking about your own sin and the need to release that, and to turn from it, and how, there are situations, if you have a disease that's not your fault, if you've been treating people badly and are alone, then that's different. And I know a lot of people will say God loves you just the way you are, and if you're thinking that, and some of this is making you go, whoa, wait a minute. Here's what I think about that. God does love you just the way you are. He doesn't intend to leave you that way. And that doesn't mean you've got to scramble and fix everything before you come to him. You can come to him now, and he's going to do incredible work. You may not have to join the Marines.
But you have to be open, and you have to have that mentor to help you, to guide you through that. Because when you come, it's the sanctification process that you spoke of, and that takes a long time. It takes a lifetime, to be honest with you, because we're still going through it. You and I both are still going through it. We're still learning it as well. And we're still learning new things. And so, there's been, when I gave my life, then I had my own business. It was crumbling. I had been dating a Christian girl for 4 years, and that relationship broke up. My brother's wife was on her deathbed because they were drug and alcohol users. And I had already lost my mom, my dad, and 2 other brothers. And so my life was I was like, how much more can I take? And if God says that he won't give us more than we can handle. And Tony Evans once in a sermon said, that's the only Bible verse that's not true, because he's going to give us more than we can handle, because he wants us on our knees looking up to him. Mm-hmm. So, and so I think that's true, because it took that much to put me down there and say, you can't do this by yourself. You got to let me take control.
All kinds of things happen that are more than we could handle on our own.
Yeah. Well, I'll share this with you. So COVID, everybody knows. So my business, I lost my business because we didn't I was in the personal training business. So I lost my business. And so we're trying to sell off as much as we can. We're trying to recoup as much of our debt as we can, get out of our lease. And I'm doing all this work, and stuff's flying out of the gym. Because when that happened, I said, God, I'm giving you the control. You get us out of this. Whatever the outcome, I'll accept. Whatever the debt is, I'll accept, and we'll take care of it. And we're going through all this, and one of my investors came up to me and said, John, your debt's canceled. You don't owe me but $10,000. I don't need it. You've been going through enough. And I wasn't even praying about that.
That's amazing.
And then, we ended up getting out of our business with a small debt compared to what we had. And, there's no way that would have happened if I would have given up my life and trusted God in that moment to get us through that.
What do you say to somebody who's been through, there are too many people that have been through the kind of trauma that you went through as a child, and they're still really wounded, and are wondering, what do I do? How can they get started on a journey like yours?
Well, the first thing is they need a counselor. And I've had people, I've been on podcasts with people go, well, why did you use a counselor? Why didn't you just trust God? Well, God put the counselor there in my life for a reason. And the way I found Christina was I Googled counselors in my area, called the first 2. They weren't taking patients. Called Christina. She was taking a patient. Got into her office, said, hey, this is what I've been through. I don't want you to candy coat anything. I'm here to work, because I wanted to do the work. And I think that's one of the keys is you have to want to do the work. And it's going to be tough, because when you start peeling that onion away, it gets a little stinky and you're going to start crying, and it's painful. And so it takes a little bit of work on your part, but you need a counselor. If you can find a Christian counselor, that's even better. But either a counselor and a spiritual mentor like I had, or a counselor who's a spiritual counselor.
How did you find your mentor?
Christina and I were doing a session one day, and for lack of better terms, there was a demonic presence in the room, showed up. So I went to church and I explained to one of the pastors what happened, and they said, you need to talk to Scotty Kessler. So I sat down with Scotty, and Scotty used to work in the deliverance ministry. And so we talked a long time about it, and then he took me under his wing, and he's mentored in his career, because he used to coach college football. He's probably mentored 1,500 to 2,000 young men through their acceptance to Christ and their growth in Christ. And that's how I found it. It was just by the chance, grace of God, because he was working at the church I was attending. Didn't know him until that time when was first that guy. So,
very cool. Have you had the chance to mentor anybody else?
I do mentor a few people, yeah, and so I follow Scotty's plan. He's got a plan. It's actually in my book. He gave me permission. It's called the Big 10. It's a step-by-step 10 procedures that you can use to help mentor or bring somebody to Christ. It teaches you how to pray. It teaches you how to read the Bible memorization. Teaches you how to do a gospel presentation. It also teaches you how to lead somebody to Christ, a gospel invitation. And it walks you straight through that. It works, and so that's what I use when I start bringing somebody on. But I also sit down and I want to know, what is their commitment? Because my prayer time and my waiting time is 3 till 5 in the morning. Mm. So if you want to join me, you gotta get up off early.
And then have you ever said that to anybody and then have them say, "Do you know any other mentors?"
Yes, usually. They call me crazy because, so I get, people go, "How do you have the energy to get to today?" And I said, well, I've been doing this since 2014, and, I have that time in the morning, and God gives me the strength to get through the day. That's all I can say.
Yeah. So you, you're a fitness instructor, so of course you have the energy.
Sometimes I don't.
I want to go back to, you said you went to the University of Ohio University.
Yeah, Ohio.
Yeah. Did you play football, or were you involved with?
No, when I got out of the Marine Corps, obviously I was 27, so I didn't want to try to play football with 18, 19-year-old kids. So what I did is I started coaching at a local high school as I was working on my undergrad degree. And then as I got closer to graduation, the university went through a coaching change, and Jim Grobe and his staff came in from the Air Force Academy. And so his son was a quarterback at the high school. So I developed a relationship and then got on as a grad assistant, got my master's degree, and then left to North Carolina to coach high school football. And shortly after that, Coach Grobe left Ohio University and ended up at Wake Forest University. Mm. And so, it was a great time. It was just a fantastic situation. And then I left North Carolina. I got married, and we went through a rocky time, and we ended up getting a divorce. So I moved to Georgia, coached down there until I lost my dad in 2003. My mom got real sick, so I moved back to the Northwest. And that's basically when my coaching career ended. And I got into the fitness industry because I wanted to do something with my degree.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that works out well. Do you, if somebody gets the book, Broken and Redeemed, they read the book, and you could boil it down to one or two things, what do you most want them to come away with?
I would say, number one, that no matter what you've gone through, you can get to this level if you find that mentor or someone to help you. At the end of every chapter, I put reflective questions, because I want people to do that self-examination. And they don't have to redo the questions as they do every chapter. They can if they want. They can go back and answer them, but I encourage all of them to do it, because it's going to put that self-reflection in to their life, and it's going to start helping them open up their mind to that complete surrender. And so that would be the number one thing. And then just that there's hope. I mean, because no matter what you've been through, you can overcome it. Mm-hmm. So,
well, thank you, John. I want to thank you for taking your story and saying I want to use what I've been through to help other people get through what they're going through. And every time I talk to somebody who's done that, I feel like you need to know that's an important thing that you've done, and definitely admire it. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I will share this one tidbit with you. So I had a young lady, she direct messaged me from Facebook. She found the book, and she was a couple years behind me in high school, so we really didn't know each other. And she said that she got my book and read it, and had she not found the book at that time, she was going to commit suicide. And so she is now still alive, and she attends church every day. She reads the Bible every day. I put her on a reading plan. I don't really do mentoring with her because you shouldn't mentor opposite sex. So I just got her on a reading plan. I got her started back in church, and we still stay in touch because I check in on her. And that's been 3 years.
That sounds strong.
Walking with Christ. And I tell people all the time, well, if I don't sell another book, be happy. Because I saved someone's life.
Mission accomplished. Although there are going to be more stories that you'll find out about on the other side, because not everybody's going to have the opportunity to come talk to you. So that's pretty exciting. Broken and Redeemed, Finding Freedom Through Complete Surrender is the name of the book. What's the best way to get a hold of it?
Anywhere books are sold. If you want an autographed copy, you go to brokenandredeemed.com. You can order it off my website. I'll sign it and ship it to you, and that way you have a signed copy.
Really nice. brokenandredeemed.com, that's the website. How else can people connect with you or follow you?
I'm on Facebook. So Facebook's just my name. Social media, or Instagram is John_brokenandredeemed. So you can find me on either of those platforms.
Excellent. John, thank you so much for taking the time today. We're really, really glad you did.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Shaken. If you know someone who's asking questions like, why did God allow this to happen? Is God angry at me? What do I make of my suffering? Would you please share Shaken with them? You can help more people find Shaken by liking and subscribing and reviewing this podcast. You can find more episodes at purposely.com or wherever you get podcasts.